Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today, as we're going to be having a very interesting conversation. We want to talk about the countdown, the ticking time bomb that has been going on. It's been happening for the last 10 days. It will continue for the next 6 days. And at the end of it all, it will have an impact on every single American, everyone around the globe. This is the big deal. This is the Big Bang. And we're going to tell you more about that in just 1 second. But before we get started, we do want to mention, if this is the first time that you've seen the channel, we want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. In addition, we want to let you know that we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream. We go to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive. We reach out on all the internet that the internet overlords will allow to reach you, to speak with you about the issues that matter. And you can reach us on chat and tweets and even phone calls to tell us your thoughts from anywhere in the world, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech. Even if your government, even if the internet overlords do not, we believe in you, and we hope that you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, with that said, let's get to the issue at hand. As you might notice in the background, there's a bit of a ticking time bomb, a pulse that's going off, and that's appropriate for what's going on right now. And this actually started back 10 days ago. And it's kind of appropriate because, well, everyone loves a little ticking time bomb. I mean, it's one of the big tropes in media, is that ticking time bomb, that race against the clock. Something that I think Joe Biden is trying to accomplish, or at least was the intention of what he was trying to accomplish, in trying to get things to go down to the wire, to be the hero, to foil the evil scheme at the last possible second, to pull off the impossible mission. Something that none of his contemporaries, President Obama, no one could get this done. And yet Joe Biden would. Obviously, we're talking about Afghanistan and what's been going on in that nation. We've been talking about this almost from the very beginning. In fact, having coverage on August 15th as the world was becoming aware that the Taliban had taken over Afghanistan, that the Americans were in full retreat, running away as quickly as possible, and forcing our allies from around the world in France, Germany, England, Australia to have to run as well, in a mission that is, well, convoluted at best. That's the easiest way to explain it, as we had civilians, it's estimated for Americans alone, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15,000 Americans that were nowhere near Kabul and had no idea beforehand that they needed to get out of that nation immediately. Obviously, this has become a bigger and bigger problem. Now, it was exactly 7 days ago when we first spoke out, and we asked this very important question. Where is Kamala Harris? Why is she not assuring Americans that no terrorists will cross the southern border as the Middle East is exploding? As 5,000 ISIS members, terrorists who have been put into prison, they've been released from prison with a desire to destroy the United States and our allies. Where is the immediate action to close the border? And that's a big deal. It's a big concern because the border is wide open. 1.1 million people have crossed into the United States in the last 6 months alone. More are on the way because of the policies and the promises made by not only the Biden administration, but the progressive socialist Democrats as well. And when we couple that with this instability in the Middle East, this growth and this reemergence of ISIS, of Al-Qaeda, of the Taliban, and the empowerment of Iran, well, that's a concern, not only for the United States, not only for Israel, but also the United Kingdom and France, very specifically. So to hear from Kamala Harris, who was put in charge of the southern border back in February of 2021, when she was given this mission to close the border, to slow down the number of illegal aliens crossing into the United States, to help shore up and secure the national security, that was a timely question. And it's a question that we kind of have an answer to now. But in addition to that, we also had another thing that we had to ask. This is something that we had to say back on the 18th at 6 p.m., that same night, because we had an announcement. We had a speech by General Milley, and he was telling us about Afghanistan and the retreat. And we caught something in that conversation, in that update from the United States government. There was something that he said that really threw us off, and we'll play that for you right now.
There'll be many postmortems on this topic, but right now is not that time. Right now, there are troops at risk, and we are the United States military, and we fully intend to successfully evacuate all American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. All American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. They are our priority number one. All American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. They are our priority number one.
See, and that's the thing that gets us. That's the thing that really stood out to us. All Americans who want to get out. That was 7 days ago. There was no Americans, as far as we can understand. There are no Americans, no NATO troops, no U.S. allies. There's no organization from the UN that wants to stay in Afghanistan. They're all leaving as quickly as possible. It doesn't matter whether it's a UN women's rights organization or United States citizens, they're all trying to get out, well, along with tens of thousands, up to 60,000 Afghan individuals, Afghan natives, are trying to get out of Afghanistan because of the fear of the Taliban, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda, and this imminent expectation of not only further conflict, but also of a crackdown of these fundamentalist Islamist radicals and the way they perceive things. That women are suddenly going to be beaten and stoned because they're able to read. Young women ages of 15 are going to be married off to strangers, grown adult men. LGBTQ are going to be thrown off of rooftops and burned. This is the concern. Who is staying for that? Why would you say? No one. So it threw us off when he said, everyone who wants to leave. Well, everyone wants to leave, and everyone is trying to leave. And then we started to understand, because it sounds like something that the Biden administration would say to take some of the pressure off, to suggest that if there are Americans who stayed in Afghanistan after the 31st, after the deadline that was created by Joe Biden himself, it was his deadline, that once that deadline passed, well, they're going to say, well, they wanted to. It's their choice. I'm not responsible, which is a really harsh way of putting off this action on these individuals who may not have made that choice themselves. And it was actually when we saw 4 days ago, when it was the New York Times, and they came out and they said, fear rises about safety of Afghan airport as U.S. warns Americans to stay away. Well, that's kind of troubling. August 21st. What did we see 4 days ago? The answer is there was a security alert from the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan, in Kabul. And they stated they instructed Americans still marooned in Kabul not to travel to the airport unless you receive individual instructions from a U.S. government representative to do so. U.S. officials said that the most serious current threat was that Afghanistan's Islamic State branch would attempt to attack, and an attack that would both hurt the Americans and damage the Taliban's sense of control. Well, this is a problem. This is ISIS. Well, this is terrifying. Are you sure? What are these Americans supposed to do? They're stuck in Afghanistan, a nation that is going haywire, and they can't get to the airport. They can't get through the throngs of Afghani individuals who are trying to get to escape as well. They're trying to get onto planes, as we have seen, willing to jump onto jet planes as they take off and fall to their deaths. And you're supposed to get through that throng. We've gotten reports since this started that the Taliban have beaten individuals. They have shot individuals. They have burned individuals just because they are near the airport. And how many of those people could have been American? Americans are staying away, but we're trusting the Taliban? We're taking their word. A group of terrorists. We're taking their word and we're holding them as responsible. These are people who've been waging war for 20 years against the United States. They've been killing Americans and Afghan citizens. And we trust them? It gets even worse because here it is today, August 25th. There are 6 days left before President Biden's artificial August 31st deadline. A deadline he set for himself. No one else made that. And what do we see that's going on right now? Well, the U.S. is to evacuate until the deadline, but it's brutal at the airport. No one is sure if the airport's going to be okay. This is coming from the AP News. And what are they reporting? Well, in part, many more Americans remain to be evacuated, although the Biden administration has declined to publicly estimate the total. U.S.-based organizations, speaking on background to discuss sensitive matters, cites accounts from witnesses on the ground as saying some American citizens and family members of Afghans with green cards still having trouble pushing and talking their way into the Kabul airports for flights. Well, that's because we know that there's something like 6,000 Americans, possibly 9,000 Americans that are still stuck, not just in Kabul, but throughout all of Afghanistan. And we know for a fact that even though there have been some 82,300 Afghans who have been evacuated, there's been only about 4,000, maybe less Americans who've been evacuated. That's in total. That's going to England, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Australia, all of our allies. So there's a big question here. And now we see that there is a downturn because the U.S. troops are starting to leave. There were 5,800 of them, and now there's 5,400. They're starting to prepare to leave as well. So it's very troubling. In fact, when we look at this from looking at the Insider, Business Insider, also from today, August 25th, U.S. General says there's 10,000 people still waiting to be evacuated from Kabul's airport. That's a lot of people. 19,000 were supposedly evacuated in total, but thousands of Americans remain in the wind. Getting to the airport has been an issue for many Americans and Afghans hoping to escape. Taylor, a general, he's Army Major General Hank Taylor, confirmed that a third group of Americans, less than 20 overall, were extracted via helicopter and brought to the airport. So at least 3 groups of Americans had to be evacuated using helicopters. We know that at least 23 German citizens had to be evacuated by helicopter by the U.S. troops, along with German forces, ground forces. So we know that there are people all over, and they can't get to the airport. In fact, they were told not to go to the airport. Meanwhile, that clock keeps ticking. The pulse keeps raising as we get closer to August 31st. And we know for a fact that the Taliban has already told the United States, get out. There is no extension of the time. They're not going to allow the U.S. troops to be there without conflict at Kabul or any other part of Afghanistan. They don't care who's being left behind. Well, that brings up a question, as reported by The Independent. The Pentagon can't say how the final hours of the evacuation from Kabul will play out, and here's the important part, or how many Americans remain. So we can see already, according to The Independent out of the United Kingdom, that the Pentagon is anticipating there will be Americans that will be left in Afghanistan because of the deadline created by Joe Biden. And that brings us, I want to remind you, this is a question we asked back on 7 days ago, August 18th. A question that has not been answered by the Biden administration, by the White House, by General Milley. It's something that's been avoided at every single turn. The major news media has generally avoided even addressing this issue. But we find out that there's already been a plan, that the Pentagon is already expecting to leave some number of Americans, whether it's 1 or 1,000 or 5,000, we don't know. But they're going to leave them there. Perhaps that is exactly why we heard General Milley say in his interview, in his press conference, that everyone who wants to leave, well, the Pentagon was already planning on leaving people. This is their excuse. This is their way out. And this is causing problems. This is causing problems everywhere in the world. This is from German television, and this is one of the things that they had to say today.
Well, earlier I spoke to analyst Tyson Barker from the German Council on Foreign Relations and asked him if NATO countries will be more wary of backing Washington in the future.
One of the key tenets of NATO and allied operations in the past 20 years and beyond has been in together, out together. And clearly that principle is really under question and under strain in this operation. We see the desire of other NATO allies, because of the capacity questions, to spend more time protecting the Kabul airport in order to get their citizens and their allies, Afghan allies, out. And that is something that the U.S. is simply not willing to do, given the conditions set by the Taliban.
So it's not just Americans. It's not just the Americans who can't get out in time. We're talking about the French, the Germans, the Australians, the British from the United Kingdom. They can't get out. They can't get their people out in time. Reports are continuously coming in telling us there's just not enough time to get everyone, especially with the conditions on the ground that the Biden administration is begging the Taliban to please let us get our people and get out. Let us run away as fast as possible with our people. And the Taliban has no real interest of doing anything for the United States, even as the Biden administration continues to try and bribe the Taliban with foreign funding. Something that they've been doing before August 15th, as reported by the New York Times, and they continue to do even at this moment with CIA directors out in Afghanistan trying to have one-on-one negotiations. This is a problem for the world, and the clock keeps ticking. The pulse keeps rising. It's getting worse and worse. And that makes me wonder, because there's another element in this that we were speaking about in this time bomb that's been ticking away that we didn't get to address before. We want to address it right now because we said it was about Kamala Harris. We asked that question. Where is Kamala Harris? What is she doing? Why has she not assured the American people that her job of watching the southern border to protect American interests, that she's on the job, that she is protecting that, and that she has improved things so that there won't be another 1.1 million people crossing our border, as has already happened under her watchful eye? Well, the simple answer is Kamala Harris is overseas. She went to Vietnam. She went to Vietnam in the hopes of trying to salvage the U.S. relationship with our allies. Just as we see with Germany having noticed this, that there is significant damage now in NATO, that the French, the Germans, the United Kingdom do not have the same level of trust because Joe Biden didn't tell anyone what he was doing. He didn't give anyone the time to get their people, and now they are suffering from that. Well, there's also the question of what's going on in Taiwan, as we've addressed in earlier videos. There's also the question of what's going to happen with Vietnam. What about our allies on the Far East? They're very concerned. Is America going to stand up for them? Is America going to cut and run and leave them on their own? Well, Kamala Harris decided that it was her job to go to Vietnam, to take a trip through Southeast Asia, to assure all of our allies America was there, and she came intending to bring gifts. She wanted to donate 1 million COVID-19 vaccines to Vietnam to show that the United States is still supporting the Southern Vietnamese, that the United States is still an ally to Southeast Asia. And as it turned out, China decided to do better. See, Kamala Harris couldn't even get her plane up off the ground without an incident. Another example of ineptitude and inefficiency. And so what did China do? Well, China decided that they were going to give 2 million shots. They promised Vietnam that China would give 2 million shots of COVID vaccines when Kamala Harris couldn't even get there on time. Which is kind of the statement that China is making, that the U.S. isn't committed. They can't even get a plane to fly on the schedule that they had already established, sending over their number 2, their second team, the B team, which is Kamala Harris, someone who had already embarrassed the United States in South Korea not 2 months ago? And now here comes this next embarrassment that she says, we're going to give 1 million the vaccine, and China's already given 2 million, showing even more of a commitment to the people of Vietnam and showing that the United States is just a step behind, that they are lagging, and that they don't have a true commitment. The pulse is way up. The time on the time bomb is ticking down. On August 31st, what is the likelihood that we are going to see, just as we had saw with General Milley 7 days previously, when General Milley said that Americans who want to leave, I'll play it again.
Postmortems on this topic, but right now is not that time. Right now, there are troops at risk, and we are the United States military, and we fully intend to successfully evacuate all American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. All American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan.
There's the excuse. That's the line. That's the message that we are going to hear on August 31st. Anyone who is left, well, the Biden administration tried to get them out. The Biden administration sent out helicopters to try and pick them up. We did everything that we could. We bribed the Taliban. We held the airport, and they just didn't come. Even though we told them not to. Even though the U.S. Embassy told them, don't come. Told them it's not safe. Even though we knew that people were being shot and beaten with whips all in front of the airport. And the Taliban, as well as ISIS now, are blockading this and planning to kill American citizens as they try to escape that nation. So the message is going to come out, not the truth, but the spin. They wanted to stay. We left them because they wanted to be there. And when these Americans come and make their message, make themselves known, when they're able to reach out to the international media and they say, the United States left me. I'm suffering. I've been captured as a hostage. These are the stories you're going to hear. And when we hear that, the Biden administration is going to turn around and say, but you wanted to stay. It's not our fault. We took everyone who wanted to go, even though that is demonstrably not the truth. The pressure is up. The pulse is going. And we have to ask you, is it really worth it to watch Kamala Harris fail overseas rather than protect the United States border as we asked and questioned? Is it fair? Is it good for America that we are showing ineptitude in every single aspect of our foreign policy? Let me ask you, do you accept the message as it's been set up, as it's been planned by the Pentagon and the Biden administration, that some Americans will be left behind? that the United States government is going to fail in its first and primary mission, which is to protect American citizens. Do you think this is going to lead to another war? And as we discussed with former U.S. diplomat Eric Caron, do you think this leads to World War III? Especially if Americans are taken hostage, if they are harmed, beheaded by the Taliban or ISIS or Al-Qaeda. What do we do then? How big does this fiasco go? How big will the explosion be? We look forward to hearing your thoughts on this. We look forward to hearing your comments, and we will continue, as we have been for the last 10 days, we will continue to follow this issue and ask the questions that the major news media will not ask. We thank you, and we do hope that every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will join us for our live stream, talking to the world and hearing from you. We thank you, and we hope you have a great day.